Hi everyone, this is Jed Schlackman. I'm a holistic counselor and energy healer, and in this video I want to speak about the topic of social anxiety, also often called social phobia. This refers to situations where someone has an anxiety or insecurity related to social situations, and it's really a very common pattern. So there are many people who have difficulty feeling comfortable, we'll say, in social situations. And this is something that exists kind of on a continuum or spectrum. So perhaps the majority of the population actually have some degree of discomfort or insecurity in social situations, or at least some social situations, while there are people that are at the extreme end of the spectrum who have a very hard time being in any social situation without starting to become super anxious or panicking. So we're going to talk about what's kind of the source or the underlying causes that trigger this, and some approaches that could help a person overcome that and become more calm, more confident, more secure dealing with social interactions. At the core of this, I perceive it's an issue about the self and how we feel about ourselves, how self-confident we are, how secure within our own being we actually feel. So if you're anxious or insecure in social situations, there are multiple fears that could be involved there. You could be afraid of being ridiculed, of being rejected, of being judged or criticized. You could be afraid of experiencing even physical harm. There could be a fear of being embarrassed, humiliated, or shamed in some way. And all of those things that you could be anxious or afraid of, you're kind of creating that scenario in your mind. So the vast majority of the time we're not actually encountering those reactions or outcomes in social situations. There may be some limited number of situations where we have experienced at least some of those things. And often if you go back in time to a person's early years, to their childhood, to the time when they were even a toddler, baby, or infant, you can find situations where a person experienced some form of distressing interaction, whether it was in their family, with peers at play or at school. So we do often have these socially stressful situations that generate a particular emotion, and that emotion can feel overwhelming, and the person can develop a pattern or a habit of avoiding social interactions, or kind of shutting themselves down, constricting themselves in a social situation as their means of avoiding feedback or reactions that would trigger a similar unpleasant emotion. So if, let's say, you were a child and someone was teasing or bullying you and people were laughing at you, and you felt very diminished or demeaned by that particular experience, then you may find some means of trying to avoid having that happen again. So you might just keep silent when you're around your peers because you're afraid of saying something that other people might laugh at. You might find ways to avoid being in a social group. So you could actually develop other areas or interests. So you might be someone who spends a lot of time by yourself reading a book, playing video games, doing things that enable or allow you to reduce the time that you're spending socializing. And the more you repeat those kind of coping strategies or patterns, the more ingrained it becomes, the more it kind of reinforces itself. And also the more you might start to create an anxiety in your mind just thinking about going into a social situation. Often we start to recognize that rationally the social fears and phobias are not really valid. We can see that when we're in a social situation, usually the people around us are not attacking us, they're not ridiculing us, they're not trying to make us feel bad or negative in some way. Usually we're being treated okay in those social situations. But there's a part of our consciousness that's still carrying some form of memory that is associated with the negative reaction, with the unpleasant emotions connected to social situations. So before we even have a chance to try to rationally think and convince ourselves that there's nothing really to worry about, that there's nothing to avoid, we're going into this subconscious reaction where our body is actually creating this energetic and chemical response to a social situation that's making us feel anxious. So the feeling is initiated or activated even before we could rationally think about that situation. So we're already feeling anxious, we're already getting butterflies in our stomach, so to speak, and we're reacting based on that rather than any conscious choice or decision to engage socially. In terms of finding ways to overcome these patterns, we can realize that there's multiple approaches, multiple layers to this, where we can try to break that negative feedback loop, where we can try to override or pause that subconscious reaction of anxiety. One way to do that would be to practice bringing yourself into a very calm state where you get your body into this state of equilibrium, where we're feeling this sense of serenity, you could say, and to really attach to that feeling, that state of being on a physical level. So really honing that state of calmness, really kind of grounding and centering yourself in that and carrying that with you into any situation. So kind of getting that strength and confidence that you can maintain that equilibrium wherever you are, whatever people might be around you, whatever anyone else might say to you, or no matter how anyone else looks at you, you're going to be secure in that calm state. That's like a form of rehearsing calmness or centeredness. You can also rehearse specific situations, so you can imagine or envision yourself in different social situations that might have previously triggered anxiety, and just picturing yourself being more calm, being more at ease, and also being able to have kind of like an immunity to the negative responses that you might have kind of imagined or scared yourself with. So let's say you're afraid that someone's going to say something negative about you personally, or about your skills at something, or your performance with something. You can imagine kind of laughing it off. So not even taking that feedback seriously. Just imagine yourself not caring so much what other people think. So in addition to being able to use some self-talk, some rational process to convince yourself that you don't have to worry about people's reactions or judgments, you can also use your vision, your imagination, to review that type of a situation and actually imagine yourself going through that situation and handling it in a different way. So that's what you could refer to as rehearsal. So in your mind, you're rehearsing that. It's kind of like a visualization you're creating for yourself. As you do that, you're kind of going into a meditative or hypnotic type of state. So you could also have a therapist work with you on that, someone who guides you through that. And if you do start to have some anxiety come up as you're visioning, as you're imagining that, that person could also help coach you to reconnect with something that brings you back toward a state of calmness, something that reminds you that you're actually safe, you're secure, there's no true harm that's happening to you. Any harm that you're perceiving is just something you're imagining, it's not real. So those are some resources you could use in terms of rehearsing, in terms of visualizing, connecting with that calm state. Another approach is to connect with your past self, to kind of go back into your memory banks to review past situations that may have created, in a sense, or initiated those fears that you've been carrying. So if you've had any of those experiences at some other time that were emotionally stressful, you can go back to reconnect with that part of yourself that may have felt traumatized, may have felt rejected, humiliated, whatever that emotion or feeling might have been. And you can carry the positive attributes back to your past self. In other words, you could carry a source of peace, of calmness, of security within your own being, of being confident in who you are. Carry those qualities to that version of you that had a difficult time somewhere in the past, perhaps when you were a young child. So let that younger version of yourself know that he or she is okay, doesn't really have to be afraid of what other people are thinking or saying about you, how they're looking at you. You can be okay just within yourself, knowing that those people's words or looks or thoughts about you are not really harming you now. And even if they may have seemed to harm you in the past, that past is done with, it's gone now. It doesn't have to control the present. You don't have to continue to protect yourself, to defend against that type of experience anymore. You're not that same person. You're secure now within your being, and you can handle those social situations. So it's kind of owning that empowered version of yourself. to aid in this process, one thing I would recommend is creating this vision, this multisensory picture of yourself as confident, as empowered, as secure, and not afraid of what other people are thinking or saying about you. So you're creating or generating this empowered identity, even if you haven't actually been experiencing that identity up until now. You can imagine yourself as that identity. You could even think of a person that you know or someone that you see in the movies or TV, for example, a character who has those qualities, someone you might use as a role model, and picture yourself as that type of character. So you're creating this character for yourself and preparing really to embody that character in your actual everyday life. Just like an actor who's preparing for a movie has to imagine themselves as the character that they are playing, so that when they're in that role, they're acting as if they were that character. Well, you can do that for yourself. You're creating this character for you to actually become in your life. Someone who's confident, someone who's fearless, someone who's really comfortable with interacting socially with others. So it's picturing yourself kind of as an extrovert, someone who enjoys social engagement and who's not really concerned that other people are going to think anything negative or do something negative to them. And even if there were people who were hostile or critical toward you, you wouldn't take it personally. You would be okay with yourself regardless. So that's the kind of character you're creating for yourself, and you're practicing and imagining or envisioning yourself as that character. So you're combining that perhaps with the rehearsing. So you're seeing yourself as that confident person going into a social environment or situation and being okay, knowing that you're fine no matter how other people are reacting. One thing to realize is that most people are actually more concerned with themselves and their own insecurities. They're not looking to put down another person. They're not looking to demean you. Their focus is more on themselves and their own needs or desires or wants. If we think about anxiety and how it's manifesting physically and energetically, it's to a great extent actually focused around the solar plexus area. So our stomach area is often the center that's most related to anxiety. It's where we start to kind of tense up, so you're not able to breathe fully down into your diaphragm, and then your heart starts to speed up, and that's kind of the physical aspect of what people often experience. If we can kind of relax that area and help our solar plexus open up and expand and let in more energy, that also can help calm down those anxious reactions. So you can imagine or picture kind of a brilliant ball of light building up there in the solar plexus, kind of radiating out. That light's expanding and empowering you. It's giving you more strength, more confidence and courage, so that you can project yourself more confidently when you are around other people. So social anxiety has a lot to do with how we feel in terms of our personal power in relation to others. often the initial triggers of it are situations where we're around other people who we feel have power over us. So it could be a parent who is critical toward you, a teacher who says something critical toward you, an older sibling. So there are a variety of people we interact with in our lives who kind of have a position of power over us, and we don't feel we have the power to interact with them on an even level. So we feel disempowered in some of those interactions. And then we get in the habit of interacting with people in a more generalized way from that place of disempowerment. So we can overcome that pattern. We can build up that confidence, that empowerment within ourselves. For many people, it happens naturally as they get older and take on different roles in life. But sometimes we still feel, even when we're older, like we're that insecure, disempowered child. So help that child part of yourself feel that it is empowered now. It can relate to people on an even level, on an equal power basis, and know that you're valuable, your voice is important. So it's important for you to express yourself when you're around other people. You don't have to stay shy or quiet. You can put yourself out there in a sense. You can shine. And as you shine, don't worry about whether other people are ready to receive that light. You're just shining and being who you are, regardless of other people's attitude toward you, of their perception of you. You're okay with yourself. You don't have to depend so much on other people to validate you or accept you. You have that validation coming from within, from appreciating, from accepting yourself just as you are. So this is a way to think of that. It's a form of cognitive reframing of things. So the way we think about ourselves and these social situations can also be important in helping us overcome social anxiety or social phobia. We can work with our body, with our energy system. We can connect with those subconscious parts of ourself. So our child self, our adolescent self, our young adult self. We can work with all these aspects of who we are to align them with this sense of self-confidence. One last thing I want to suggest is to not really take yourself so seriously. To realize that we are kind of like a character in a game, the game of life, and we're kind of playing here. Our greater self, our spiritual self, is this magnificent, powerful being, and that aspect of ourself isn't really scared. It's not afraid to show itself, to be heard, to be seen, and we can tap into that greater part of ourself and bring more of that into who we're expressing here as this human character, as this personality that we're playing out. So have fun in life. Don't take yourself or the world around you too seriously. Obviously, we do our best to be a responsible person, to create an image of ourselves that we think other people will respect, but we don't have control over everyone else and how they're going to perceive us. So if there are other people out there who don't value you, who don't respect you, it's okay. you're not dependent on that for your sense of well-being. For those that are interested in holistic health, in personal growth, in spirituality, you can watch some other videos on the topics, and I also invite you to view my website, phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com, where you can find many other resources, and there's also information about the healing and counseling services that I offer. For now, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.